So here is my talk. We are here to discuss the treatment of women with endometriosis, but the symptom that we're treating is not just pain, but infertility. So why are we talking about strategies? That is because there's a lot of ways to get through and arrive at the outcomes that we want, because the endometriosis is a phenomenon that is as varied as there are phenotypes of endometriosis, let alone there are also combination morbidities, including tubal and male factor that may hamper a woman's fertility. So these are my disclosures. And this is a short outline of my talk. First is that let us discuss what are we targeting with regards fertility treatment. Second is that how do we determine the pathway that is most efficient for a woman to overcome her infertility issues? And then the last is, are there specific protocols that may improve implantation knowing it is impaired in endometriosis and eventually achieve a live birth? So let us first tackle the targets of fertility therapy. So we should be aware that the pathophysiology of the disease and its iterations target several parts of the reproductive system. And when these are known, then we can individualize the care of women with these concerns. So here's a beautiful illustration of how endometriosis affects fertility through various mechanisms. As you can see here, the ovarian function is compromised. And when we mean compromised, it does not just mean that the ovary has a cyst, but functionally, there is a decrease in ovarian reserve, and this is adequately measured by the level of an anti-Mullerian hormone. It's a surrogate marker for follicular number, but we can also do antral follicle count. Although if you have an ovarian endometrioma, then this is difficult to look for. So this would lead to less oocytes harvest should we have an IVF cycle for this woman. And even if we stimulate our ovaries maximally, less oocytes result eventually in less viable embryos. And even if we are able to obtain embryos, replacing them, doing an embryo transfer is still a challenge, as a woman with endometriosis has impaired endometrial function. So decidualization is hampered, gene expression is affected, the vascular maturation and immune cell responses are impaired, and overall, this will result in a failure to implant. And even if implantation indeed occur, then you know that implantation is impaired when the placentation or trophoblastic invasion of the placenta is likewise defective in a woman with endometriosis. So it is of no surprise that because you have impaired placentation, your outcomes, pregnancy outcomes, including miscarriage, preterm labor, as well as preeclampsia, follow close behind. And that means that women with endometriosis are seemingly of particular risk for these disorders that will affect the placenta, and all because trophoblastic invasion is impaired because of receptivity issues. So we hope we are able to do a good job by overcoming this, because otherwise preeclampsia, we will add to the unfortunate census of preeclamptic women uh, with even with prophylaxis and detection notwithstanding. So if you can see here in this diagram, ovarian reserve will rapidly decline in a woman with endometriosis. And because of this, we should consider preserving the ovary by either suppressing the disease or proceeding with IVF. Well, you can see that the algorithm diverges, a woman who is not desirous of pregnancy should have suppression. But if the patient defers the desire for for fertility treatment, then before commencing treatment, we are suggesting that we should undergo ovarian reserve testing so that after she emerges from suppression, we know fully well what we are talking, what the prognosis will be. So even if normal, a woman who is already of advanced age, that means if your anti-Mullerian hormone or ovarian reserve is normal, may consider proactive fertility preservation. So that is one consideration that is now being aggressively advocated by many sectors. However, if your AMH is already low, or if fertility is already desired on an immediate basis, then definitely IVF is indeed an option. So the unfortunate fact is that while AMH is independently decreased by the variable of age, the effect is more pronounced. Here you can see outlined in the red box when a woman has endometriosis. So you have a younger cohort of women, their AMH is expectedly high, but with endometriosis, the woman with endometriosis has lower AMH compared with her peers. And the effect is exaggerated as the woman ages. So given this impact on fertility, how do we select the ideal pathway to achieve a pregnancy? So what we have to do is provide organization or an organized way of making decisions. One of them is by here staging the disease. You see the disease endometriosis has several stages. You can have mild or minimal, and you can have moderate as well as severe. And the effect of the disease on fertility is exposure dependent, or there seems to be a dose relationship to dose. So the higher the stage of endometriosis, the greater the burden of the disease, the greater the impact is on fertility. And luckily, we have many methods to score endometriosis. Here is a surgical grading system, the Endometriosis Fertility Index, and it gives us a way wherein more severe disease will result in a lower score. Interestingly, there is a numeric relationship or that can predict the chance of spontaneous conception. This is the graph. The lower the EFI score, the lesser the chance of spontaneous conception. The unfortunate fact is, if you're going to use this index, we need to do surgery. And at this time, we want to avoid an invasive approach because any surgery for endometriosis has been established to do more harm than good. Fortunately, we have a non-invasive endometriosis fertility index. This non-invasive EFI has been validated using expert imaging. It's an imaging-based tool, hence the acronym U or ultrasound EFI. So this sonographic system correlates well with surgical findings. So you can see the images on top and how it looks like on laparoscopy. And when you're able to use the images as a grading system, this likewise translates to prognosis for spontaneous conception. So a strong recommendation, therefore, is given if you have very low chance of spontaneous conception, hence a direct to medically assisted reproduction or assisted reproductive technology is strongly recommended for a woman with a low EFI score, whether it's a surgical endometriosis fertility index score, or an ultrasound-based score. Why? Because you see, spontaneous pregnancies or conceptions are hardly helped by just waiting or expectant management, and no additional treatment can uh, improve the chances of success when you have a patient with moderate or severe disease. So truly, doing expectant management is insufficient for a patient with severe, moderate, or severe endometriosis. And surgery is a difficult pathway to recommend because it may, as was said earlier, do more harm than good. So when you also have other considerations apart from endometriosis, these are age, duration of infertility, and concomitant tubal or male factor, as well as the presence of severe intractable pain, then definitely you have to attend to this woman immediately. The first response will be to provide a pathway for medically assisted reproduction. This is a preferred approach versus surgical. Take note that medical suppression is not recommended for women without immediate fertility goals. What about surgery? Will surgery help these women? Surgery, let me emphasize, is only reserved for those with unresponsive pain or those with obstructive pathology. For example, bowel endometriosis or ureteral endometriosis that may cause obstructive uropathy. And lastly, we consider endometriosis surgery when we need to access the follicles when we're harvesting the eggs for ART. So ART is an important component also of fertility preservation. And oocyte or embryo cryopreservation is a suggested intervention for women with endometriosis who, for some reason, may decide to defer their fertility goals. A few patients may also want to consider ovarian tissue cryopreservation if the patient will undergo surgical management of endometriosis, say for obstructive symptoms. This should be done with care, and the value of OTC in women with endometriosis requires more study to be able to establish its cost benefit as well as risk benefit ratios. Now, having selected a pathway for ART, are there specific strategies to optimize the ultimate outcome and attain the ultimate outcomes of implantation and live birth? So for medically assisted reproduction, it was originally suggested that intrauterine insemination with ovulation induction may be beneficial. But ever since that initial study showing an improvement in live births over expectant, there is little by way of investigation that continuously support this pathway. So IUI may be beneficial, but data is limited. So therefore, IVF truly has the best evidence for women with endometriosis as a clear pathway. But is it just plain IVF or IVF embryo transfer? What particularly techniques will aid in achieving that live birth? So here is a very good representation of various strategies in IVF that may result in variable outcomes. You can see here that there's GnRH pretreatment, GnRH agonist stimulated cycles, GnRH antagonist protocol, progestin primed ovarian stimulation, as well as pre-surgical oocyte vitrification. So let us focus on the first two, the GnRH pretreatment, as well as the GnRH agonist stimulated cycles, or even the long or short cycle. So originally, the long agonist protocol was recommended for a woman with endometriosis, but that was before the advent of good cryopreservation. Nowadays, you have segmental IVF where you can pause the onward treatment of fertility by freezing and not transferring freshly uh, derived embryos. So the only issue with fresh cycles is that while they may benefit from long suppression with GnRH either by pre-treatment or a long agonist cycle, there's less control by way of, say, concomitant management of immunologic concerns for women with that disease together with endometriosis, or women who have bulky uterus when you have concomitant adenomyosis. So therefore, we may consider other options because we are able to do frozen cycle. So here is a statement from Nim and his group. This is an editorial or opinion paper, and they seem to doubt the value of the latter protocols, such as the GnRH antagonist protocols and the progestin prime protocols. And they say that GnRH protocols have had some value with regards severe endometriosis patients. However, there is an emerging evidence that if you would want to use fresh cycles, GnRH agonists may have a longer time in terms of stimulation and may require greater total dose of gonadotrophins. So the use of Dienogest as a suppression medication in lieu of the agonists has emerged as a recent development. Here is data showing that the agonist protocol, however, has a higher while it may have a higher live birth rate, it demonstrates that you have a longer duration of stimulation and a greater total dose of gonadotrophins used. So this is logical and is expected because indeed GnRH agonists, while profoundly suppressing the endometriosis, also profoundly suppresses your ovary, and it will take a long time, greater time, and greater doses of gonadotrophins to wake that ovary up. So they have proposed that an alternative that can control endometriosis, the disease, endometriosis, but still allow for rapid or lesser effort in stimulating the ovaries is the use of the Dienogest. So here, data showing that 3 months pre-treatment of the Dienogest prior to IVF and fresh embryo transfer was seen as a viable alternative to a long protocol or a GnRH agonist pre-treatment. And this will result in lower doses of gonadotrophins. However, like we said, pre-treatment prior to IVF, if you're intending for a fresh transfer, is now unwieldy. And we are now considering other options as well. So indeed, antagonist protocol and PPOS or progestin prime protocol may still be useful or may even prove superior because you're not anymore transferring in the same cycle. You're postponing the transfer, freezing the embryos, controlling the disease, and transferring once the disease is controlled. So lately, this has gained utility. Here is data showing that frozen transfers were demonstrated by this investigator to have higher clinical pregnancy rates compared with fresh transfer. And look at the data showing how large the effect of frozen transfers over fresh embryo transfers in women with endometriosis. And this is advanced endometriosis. So How about PPOS or progestin prime ovarian stimulation? Frozen embryo transfer allowed this protocol to prosper. Why? Because you will not need to, you're not constrained to prepare the endometrium in the same cycle. And the interesting part is that look at this cohort study showing that compared with GnRH antagonist and PPOS or progestin prime ovarian stimulation cycle, compared with the microstimulation group, both antagonists and PPOS cycles showed better clinical pregnancy rates and greater live birth rates. These are women who had undergone stimulation after laparoscopic cystectomy. The only problem here is that laparoscopic cystectomy resulted in diminished ovarian reserve. So indeed, the investigators had employed microstimulation as one of the options because diminished ovarian reserve women may not likely result in improved response even if you increase the stimulation. But here you can see in this data, it has been demonstrated that women who are undergoing PPOS and GnRH agonist protocol have better ovulation induction outcomes than the microstim. So what does this tell us? Tells us that the ideal thing is just obtain the eggs using a very cost-effective protocol and freeze the embryos that result from that stimulation cycle and prepare the uterus, control your implantation concerns, and only then can you do the transfer. So speaking of transfer, there's data showing that there is no ideal embryo preparation, endometrial preparation regimen. Preferred, any will do, HRT, mini stim, natural cycle, all have equivalent outcomes. But what may matter in women with endometriosis is this last study I'm going to present. Here is a study by Olsberg. It's a cohort study showing that women with higher thresholds of progesterone taken day 9 and day 11 after embryo transfer are likely to have a live birth. So this paper demonstrates the theoretical knowledge that women with endometriosis have some amount of progesterone resistance. And because endometriosis negatively impacts implantation, then we should target a higher level of progesterone in the luteal phase by improving and not neglecting luteal phase support. And this attention to progesterone levels, here it was determined that the cutoff should be above 37.1 nanogram per ml, would result in greater live birth rates. So that is the last in terms of describing the entire IVF ET cycle for women with endometriosis. So in summary, and I'd like to summarize and entertain questions later, we know that fertility is adversely affected by women with endometriosis. We know that ovarian reserve declines rapidly with age, but endometriosis further causes the decline to be dramatic. And because of that, the most expeditious pathway towards a live birth is with the use of medically assisted reproduction, specifically IVF or in vitro fertilization. The goal of IVF is to improve our chances of live birth, and this is accomplished by doing your ovarian stimulation. You may consider pre-treatment with just GnRH agonists or even the Unogest. And after you've obtained your eggs and have enough embryos to freeze, then do segmental IVF by deferring embryo transfers and controlling the disease in the interim. Lastly, once you have implanted the embryo, go for maximum luteal phase support because progesterone resistance may affect the outcomes of your patients with endometriosis. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your kind attention.